wrong side of the pond. He is DJ Schweitzer. I am Jeremy Lance. It's the middle of the day. What are we doing?
It's a midday delight. I think that's what's appropriately called, right?
Yeah, a little afternoon delight, little something special here.
Mm-hmm. And we're reconvening as we didn't have a chance to meet last night. It is Thursday now. We are an inch closer to the weekend where loads of soccer will be happening. You may or may not get to watch it because it's probably behind a paywall. But
there's a good chance. There's a good chance if you want to watch it, it's behind a paywall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've watched approximately 0 live Champions League matches over the last month and a half. I do like that they're giving us some of the replays later at night, so I'm like going back to 1997 again and you know, waiting for my TiVo to pick up the matches that I've missed.
Right. And by later in the night, you mean like re-airing at 2 a.m.
Sure. The beauties of YouTube TV is I actually have no clue when anything actually happens. Yeah. So, but no, I'm excited for the return of soccer this weekend. Lots going on in the title race, obviously blown wide open in England, but the chasing pack behind them continues to be really interesting, and we'll talk quite a bit about that on today's show.
But I guess we got to start with some fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that neither of us have touched our team. I know I haven't. Yep.
I'm not even sure I still have a team. Yeah. I think at some point the system probably just logs you out just for good, right?
It hasn't yet.
Just removed you?
You actually went up a spot this week to 89th. I did the same thing, 46th. Tyler Kelly, 13th show in a row on top. Probably owned that guy like a million wristbands at this point.
He's just going to have a whole sleeve of wrist. Like, you're just going to just sew them all together. It'll just be a sleeve.
We should probably just offer to get him a tattoo sleeve of it at this point. But there is your very quick fantasy update. Let's move over into the Premier League. And you gave us the running notes this week, and you started it off with a very complex opening point, which was West Ham ?
Yeah, like not only West Ham ? But David Moyes Manager of the Year ?
It's hard to not make that argument at this point, which seems such a ridiculous thing to say. And if you look at his career arc, it's not that weird. Like, he probably has a few of those from back in the day when he was at Everton.
Right.
Was very well respected and admired and even sought after at that point in his career. But that spell at Manchester United just is a weight around his neck that he can't really ever get rid of. And it's unfair because his West Ham side is having a brilliant season.
Well, yeah, it was the United failure that then spiraled into the descent of, gosh, what was it? Was it Sociedad? Was it Valencia? Where did he go in Spain?
Yeah, I think it was Real Sociedad, and it went very poorly there as well.
And then he comes back and he's like getting jobs at like Sunderland and stuff like that. Like the United thing super derailed the career of what you're right. Like a guy that 5-6 years ago, well, I guess longer than that, 2012, 2010, we were talking about as like one of like the big like hot names. He had Everton finishing 4th one year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to go back and look. He probably actually did win Manager of the Year that year. I mean, that's quite the achievement. But yeah, I mean, like it's been a long road back for Moyes, and he hasn't obviously sealed the deal yet. But as of now, as we head into this weekend of play, he's got West Ham not only believing, but they're currently in 4th place.
Yeah, I mean, they're sitting there now. And I put in my notes that, like, they're being inconsistent, and that makes them very vulnerable to not retaining that spot.
Makes them very West Ham.
Well, that. But also, like, and as we're going to get into here in a moment, the opportunities for the teams behind them to catch them really don't exist because they're all even more inconsistent than West Ham are. So, yeah, they've had a couple losses in their last 5. Yeah, they've had a draw in their last 5. But that's enough right now to keep them in the position that they're in.
Well, and it's actually not even about like their position right now is good, not because of their current form so much as, have you seen their schedule?
Oh,
they play nobody.
Yeah.
They play Chelsea, they play Leicester in the next like couple weeks. And then 5 of their last like 8 matches are against teams currently 13th or worse.
Yeah. And if you look at the way that West Ham are getting points this season, they're cleaning up against the teams they should clean up against. And we talked about this the last time that we discussed, like, wow, look at West Ham. They win the games they're supposed to win. They may scrap a point or get a win against sides that they shouldn't win against, but they're winning all the games that they have to win. And that honestly is enough in this league to land you in a Champions League spot. And West Ham, for the first time in eons, is in that discussion because they're doing the little things right. And Spurs, Chelsea, Everton, all these sides that are bigger,
Right.
Quote unquote. And if you really want to go historical, West Ham are every bit in that conversation.
Yep. Yep.
But they're not capable of that type of consistency at this point, and that's a large part in contributing to why West Ham, their contribution to all this is that they're doing the things they're supposed to do while the other sides can't.
So I looked back at that with West Ham. If they finish fourth or better at this point, that would be their best finish since 2012 when they finished third. It would only be their third time in the Premier League era that they finished in the money, in a Champions League spot.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that wild year in 2013 with how good they were and where they ended up in the table. But yeah, I mean, this is an anomaly as far as what recent memory gives us about West Ham. And, this was a side, what was a year or two ago, was like honestly flirting with relegation.
Yeah.
And now they're bouncing up into the Champions League places.
Some would say fortune's always hiding.
They might.
But, I think obviously we talk about this resurgence. We talk about Moyes. Obviously the other piece to that you got to throw in there right now is Lindegaard's kind of rebirth and his form since making this move over there from United.
Yeah, I mean, not a very fancied player. It's not like he's some starlet. Obviously he broke onto the scene and people thought, highly of him, but he's never gotten that same kind of pomp and circumstance that, like,
he was a high prospect, but his stock has fallen a lot over the past couple years.
And he's certainly not the first United player to find himself in that type of position where he's had to leave the club and find his feet abroad, if you will, from the United academy and United club setup. But now he's producing on a level that I think a lot of people expected him to, and maybe part of that is that he's kind of being given the keys to the car at West Ham, right? Like, it's not like Manchester United where he's having to play second, third, or fourth fiddle most of the time. He's now getting to lead the line, and he's getting to be an impact player, and sometimes that's what it takes for players. You think of like a Wilfried Zaha, who was so highly touted in his early time at Palace, and then he went to United and flamed out. But now that he's back at Palace, he's blossoming again. Sometimes those players need to be the star in order to succeed.
Yeah. So you mentioned it. West Ham, part of it is the fact that your Chelseas, your Spurs, your Evertons, even to some extent your Liverpools, even though it looks like they've kind of maybe figured some stuff out and got the ship back where it's supposed to go. Missed opportunities though for these other clubs, especially we saw, this weekend where, in a week where Chelsea could have strengthened their position at fourth, they instead completely gave up their position in fourth because they go out to play a West Brom side that is having a terrible season. And they go out and get rolled at the bridge 5-2.
Incomprehensible stuff getting beat like that at the bridge, but it really it fell apart, honestly, when not David Luiz.
Wrong Brazilian.
Yeah, wrong Brazilian there. Where Thiago Silva, and hey, let's before I get into the actual commentary here, let's not pretend that David Luiz wouldn't have done this during his time at Chelsea either. But Thiago gets sent off, and Chelsea just never recovered from that point. Like, the match started well for them. Christian Pulisic getting a rare start and a goal, and suddenly Thiago's gone, and the wheels literally fell off the bus.
Right, they gave up 2 goals right after that. Boom, boom, and
Mhm.
and then Chelsea is just absolutely floundering at that point. It it then became some real questions as far as like, okay, Tuchel, like, how you getting us out of this? And his answer
Mhm.
was, I'm not. I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
not going to get us out of this. I'm
Yeah.
going to make moves that are going to maybe not make so much sense. And the guy that scored the goal is going to maybe do something to his hamstring at halftime.
Yeah, that was, I'm glad you brought it up. That was such a weird, just a weird sequence of events. I'd flipped on the game right before halftime and got to watch that sequence live where they sent, I can't even properly describe it. Pulisic was supposed to be going back out, but then suddenly he wasn't. And
Right. He
and he
literally
was
walks out, does like one little jog onto the field, does like a little, I don't know if they had like cones out or like a ladder or something, but he does like one little move and then just stops and walks it right back into the to the dugout.
yeah, that was very odd. And this is a little bit of like a recurring thing with Tuchel. Like we've seen him have these weird moments both at PSG and at Dortmund, and it kind of seems to be like one of his coaching flaws where like he makes some odd choices very spur of the moment, and it just like yanks around the emotion of the team. And sometimes that can have a good desired effect, but other times it can be very unsettling. And this Chelsea side just seems feeble and weak in its like mentality. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, well, I mean, yes and no. I don't know. Apparently, they turn into a completely different club when it comes to European competition right now.
sure, right. But that they can't maintain that is, I think, kind of
Hmm.
contributes to
Hmm.
that idea of the inconsistency in it. And I don't know. Tuchel seems to be playing a very dangerous game with a group that doesn't really seem capable of handling that type of mental
Yeah.
games.
I mean, this is a guy that he's only been at the club for a bit, and he is already, I believe, twice now sub to sub in a match.
I think managers will go seasons without doing that.
Yeah. And he has also frequently made a halftime substitution. Like he's been pretty almost consistent with that at certain points since he's been at Chelsea of just making only giving the guy 45 minutes to prove himself out there.
Yeah.
Um, he seems suddenly very married to this three center backs at the back with the wing back play that at times it's like this is great and at times it's like, hey, we
It's
need to
not
maybe
working.
pivot into something else.
Yeah. I mean, the best teams aren't so tactically rigid, right? Like they're willing to adjust their game plan, and I don't know. I mean, Tuchel adjusts his game plan, but it's almost like whimsical. Like I'm gonna stick with this for a little bit, and then I'm gonna switch to this for a little bit, and it's not really like an in-game switch like some managers pull off, which is also like another layer to all of this. But Tuchel seems to be like, I'm gonna try this for a few games, and then I've fallen out of favor with it, and I'm gonna try something new, which is
Yeah.
it's his prerogative to do. But if you're not getting success, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily embody the idea that you're doing things the right way.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the fatal flaw of guys like Sarri and Conte is that they had like this is the way we're going to play and we're not deviating from it. And
This is the
the Wildcat offense worked for one season and then everyone figured you out and you're done.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's not just Chelsea, of course, that are struggling. And before we move on from them, props to West Brom and Sam Allardyce's side. Huge 3 points for them, but they are still
Very big.
staring. They are still staring up a very steep mountain at the moment. They need to erase an 8 point gap in their final 8 matches, which at that end of the table, that's a really big ask.
Yeah, and you got, you got a lot of clubs right around there that I don't know. I mean, we saw with Newcastle, they were able to pull one out as we kind of, switch over to talk about Spurs not capitalizing.
Hmm.
They looked to be capitalizing,
Yeah.
and then the 85th minute rolled around.
And things really fell apart for Spurs. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned them not capitalizing. Spurs looked fantastic through large stretches of this match, and that's been like a thing for Spurs this year. If you remember back to the beginning of the season, they were world beaters, and we were talking about title chances and all that type of ridiculous nonsense that we should have never done for a Spurs discussion. And then we talked about the doldrums and are they going to fire Mourinho and blah 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 blah. And now we're getting another one of those little resurgences, and they've been looking good, and they come into this match against Newcastle and are flying high, but then they started blowing chances, right? Like clear ones. Kane had a couple like easy ones that he missed that he doesn't normally miss. And, you know, we've really seen his support attack fall off. You know, Son was such an early boost to that side, and his form has plummeted to a certain extent. He's not producing in the same way. And they just, in the Spursiest of fashions, gave away the match at the end of the game. And fourth place was there for the taking. If they won that match, regardless of whether West Ham had won or not, they would have found themselves in fourth. And this just feels a lot like the Spurs I grew up with. So it's very homey and comfortable to a certain extent.
The weird thing is, as far as matches against Newcastle where you threw it away and you shouldn't have, this doesn't even rank for Spurs.
Oh, God, no. The 5-0 a couple of years ago at the end of the season to knock us out of the Champions League place.
And to knock you behind Arsenal, right?
Oh, yeah, I did both.
You had it up until that day.
Yeah, I try not to place too much emphasis on the Arsenal thing. I know that's a big deal for them. And obviously, I enjoy finishing ahead of Arsenal. But the getting knocked out of the Champions League thing that stung me a lot more. Like that really is what floated me to the top of the crap results against Newcastle pile. But this one was equally as frustrating to a certain extent. And it's once again Spurs licking their wounds.
Another team also being super inconsistent is Everton. They had Crystal Palace on the docket for the weekend. Again, a very winnable match for an Everton side that has shown their might during stretches of the season. Instead, they go out and settle for a 1-1 draw with Crystal Palace in a match where I felt like there could have been 18 goals.
Yeah, there really could have been, but there weren't. And if you watch anyone that was an Everton fan on social media while that game was unfolding, like their emotional state was riding the roller coaster. Like it was up and down, happy, displeased, angry, elated. Like it was all over the place. And I understand their frustrations, but we kind of predicted this at the beginning of the season, that they would kind of fall back to earth a little bit.
Sure.
And I think this is just another emerging sign of that. Great first 11, but their depth is really still lacking. And I think of the two sides, the three sides that we're talking about in this chasing pack behind West Ham, they're the one that seem like most right to be in this position. Like the other two, you look at their squads and you go, really, you should be above West Ham. Like what the hell is happening here? And you could say that about sides that are below us and even
Arsenal and Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. Like they should definitely be higher as well. But at the same time, like that's soccer in a nutshell for you.
It is. And it was Michy Batshuayi who scored the late equalizer in this match too.
Speaking of people seeing a little bit of resurgence once they've gotten to a new club with new surroundings, Batshuayi seems like that type of player. He's definitely the type of guy that needs to get a little bit more responsibility on his shoulders.
Batshuayi has spent the last 2 seasons of his career teetering of being a guy that should either be the star at a small Premier League side or go to mainland Europe and be the star somewhere. But at the same time, also teetering the direction of signing with the Chicago Fire. It could really go either way at any moment.
You could see him loving and living up the life as an MLS player and not having to work as hard, or at least perceive that he wouldn't have to work as hard.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's move over to the rest of the Premier League. Obviously, other things have unfolded over the weekend. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Liverpool getting their big boy pants back on a little bit, finding themselves with a nice 3-0 win at Arsenal. Very deserving win, if I do say so as well. It felt like a Liverpool performance of old.
Yeah, this is what we expect the Liverpool we've seen over the past 24 to 30 months. This is what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And even in big matches, they crush them.
Yeah, don't mention the Real Madrid game at the midweek. That's one they'd probably like to avoid discussing.
Yeah, that did not go that way.
No, it did not. But at the weekend, at least, Liverpool found themselves back in the driver's seats. Now, you look at where they are in the table. We talked about the inconsistent sides up above them, and it almost sounded like we were excluding Liverpool from this discussion. They've certainly had their inconsistencies, but we've pronounced and talked about that at length. But they're now just what 3 points off that fourth place position as well, and are
Yeah.
very, very much in the middle of this discussion. In fact, they're 2 points ahead of Everton in this discussion as well. And if they can find a vein of form again before the end of the season, like if you look at this chasing pack, they seem like the side that's probably the most well prepped to make that run.
And they really, you look at their schedule, they play United May 1st. That's it. Like they have West Brom, Burnley, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Leeds, Aston Villa. That's their season.
I mean, outside of that United game, they really don't have anything that's too sticky in there.
So you should almost count that they get 90% of their remaining points.
It's probably not a bad bet at this point. And as a Spurs fan, as I'm looking down the table behind us, that's the team that genuinely makes me shiver a little bit and go, hey, if there's anyone that's going to keep us out of Europe, it's probably going to be them.
Yeah. No, I think they definitely are in a position where they can rocket themselves right back into things. Even a team like Leicester should probably be checking the rearview mirror for a team like that. Like they can shoot up there real quickly.
Yeah, glad you mentioned Leicester. They found themselves on the losing end of a home contest against Manchester City, losing 2-0 to them. Big news in that department, at least from City. Aguero has announced he's leaving the club at the end of the season, which is pretty big deal. 10-year span for Kuhn, who's undoubtedly probably been if not the best, one of the few best strikers in the league for a majority of that spell. But his City side now 14 points clear at the top after getting that 2-0 win, just steadily pulling off into the distance and genuinely running away with the title at this point. Leicester, though, find themselves slipping down into third place, and we again find ourselves wondering, are they running out of gas like they always do at the end of every campaign?
It could be a dodgy finish for them. Looking at matches they have remaining, so that it's a big one this weekend. They play West Ham, really one of West Ham's only remaining tough matches. But then they still have to face United. So their final three matches: at United, at Stamford Bridge, host Tottenham. Those are their final three matches.
It's a bit of a rough run-in for them.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
So that could be their undoing. We'll have to see. Any other matches you wanted to throw out there?
Yeah, I toss in United getting a 2-1 win over Brighton. Nothing too surprising in that result, given the two sides. But the Reds now officially up into second place. Doesn't mean much of anything, given that there's no way they're going to cross their crosstown rivals at this point. But it's a good sign for Ole. Like, I think he'll have to pat himself on the back with a second place finish this year, when I think a lot of people were, us included, heavily doubting him at the beginning of the campaign.
Yeah. There's a good chance. And things aren't this dire for Arsenal, but there's a decent shout that, like, come the start of next season, out of that pack of three, Lampard, Arteta, and Ole, that Ole is the only one still there.
Yeah, I'm sure if you were a betting man, you maybe not would have took that bet at the beginning of the year. So, that should do enough for the Premier League on that side of the pond. Let's move over to this side. Domestic season, as we've been saying, probably for about 2 months now.
It's right there.
Coming.
We can see it. It's on the horizon. It's right there. We can make it out.
By the time this drops, we'll be, roughly a week from the Major League Soccer season beginning.
Yeah, next week is like the lead-up week where you're going to get to read all those like season previews, just kind of the media that comes out for that, of like predictions. We'll have our predictions next week. We'll have our preview next week. Exciting, because like, as I've said several times over the past month, like I'm missing that domestic action that I'm used to having this time right now.
Yeah, we are nearly there though, and lots of fun stuff is happening right now as we inch towards the season. Preseason games, most of which are falling behind closed doors and off camera, which really annoys people for some reason, despite the fact that that's what happens every year. It really kind of
Yeah,
blows my mind a little bit.
I do think, and I get that, like, that's kind of, in a way, the like more traditional setup as far as soccer around the world. Like, preseason games aren't meant for big spectacles, but like,
Mm.
here in America, part of that marketing buildup of each league is like getting people's, getting a little that little taste with those
Mhm.
preseason games. And I think the league is doing themselves a disservice by not making these. And I get, like, this year is obviously, like, with the pandemic going on, not the year you're going to be doing that, but like,
Mhm.
efforts should be made to make a few of these matches, or more of these matches just in general, like, more accessible, more marquee, give them just more buzz, and
Mhm.
that'll get more eyeballs heading into that first week.
Yeah, I'm not meaning to be dismissive of the desire to do it. I'm more like I'm surprised that people are still surprised. But I agree
Oh
with
yeah, no, they shouldn't be. I mean, this has been a
yeah.
thing for a while now, guys.
Yeah, and it's you kind of mentioned this. A lot of the American sports leagues do this. Like we're very accustomed here in the U.S. to seeing preseason games. Think spring training in Arizona and Florida, and the preseason NFL games are all televised, and the NBA literally has preseason like a week after the NBA championship is done. And
Yeah, you got the summer league, yeah.
yeah, so it's just we're used to that here, and so I get why fans are conditioned for it. I agree too, like, and I think part of the reason we see so little of the preseason games actually broadcast here is because a lot of the coaches come from environments where that's not normal, right? We have a lot of foreign coaches here, a lot of foreign influence in our game, and I think there's two as a league that is still very cost conscious. It costs a lot of money to do broadcast too, and I think people forget that even if
Oh
it,
sure.
even if a team sets up a camera and has like one camera on it, like fans will then complain about the production quality. And
Sure.
if you put out a product that you're not willing to pay for the full production quality on, that can potentially harm the league too. So I'm not trying to dismiss
Yeah,
the idea.
I think there's ways around that where you then make it not on the club. You make it more on the league and
Sure.
on broadcast partners by going like, hey, preseason, because a lot of it is these preseason tournaments where all these teams are in one location. And so look at what you did with the bubble, the MLS is back tournament, greatest tournament of all time,
Yep.
where you had like this little campus set up and you had broadcasting capabilities. Some of the sets weren't that great. I mean, there was some pretty preseason like broadcasts going on some of those. I remember what that Atlanta United FC Cincinnati match, I'm pretty sure was just filmed like from the bench. Like I just the camera angles were terrible.
On cell phones probably too.
Yeah. So like
No, I
I
mean
think
it's
if you had a tournament and you said this is where our preseason tournament's gonna be, you get like all the East Coast teams that come there, invite some USL teams that have the good eyeballs, and get just some basic broadcast that the league runs, and maybe get like one or two matches thrown on like an FS2 or on an ESPN Plus. I think that's an easy obtainable move for the league.
totally, marry all those costs together in one
Yeah,
location, save yourself some money, and why not have like and emulate a little bit of the idea of spring training a little bit. Get all the teams in one location, minimize their cost to a certain extent, for just a little bit, and give everyone just at least one official taste before the season begins. Because
what
here in
what
Cincinnati, like people are fiending over like the shots that they get from other teams' social media
yeah.
accounts, right? Like oh my gosh, here's 30 seconds of video from the game. Let's overanalyze that. And that's fine to do because that's all there is available for it. But I agree, there's an opportunity to be had. I think it's just there's some hurdles that have to be considered.
Yeah,
And
wasn't that a rumor though at one point that the MLS is back tournament was going to be transformed into like this preseason thing?
There was a lot of rumors, I think, as everyone was trying to figure out what 2021 would actually look like. There was talk of doing the MLS's back tournament all over again to actually do it the same way they did it last year. The tournament in the preseason, I think, was probably discussed as well. But we didn't get that. And, we're going to get what we're going to get. And look, everyone who's been thirsting for their team, you're going to get to see them in the very near future. And shoot, if they are playing an international competition, you may have already seen them.
Yeah, have you been watching the CONCACAF Champions League?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the Philadelphia Union get a big win. What was that, last night over, was that Saprissa that they were playing?
Yeah. Well, our buddy old Kendall Waston.
Yeah, good to see Kendall back in action out there, getting the start for the Costa Rican side, but a big win for Philadelphia. Some controversy laid on as there was a little bit of a fracas, but overall, that
murder on the pitch.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to put it.
I guess it was only a yellow, so it wasn't a full murder.
Well, hey, it's a CONCACAF murder, which is definitely just a yellow card. But no, I mean, that game was entertaining. I watched a little bit of the Toronto match as well. So I mean, look, I was looking for live soccer and I got some, and I'm not going to complain too much about that.
Yeah, no, I was jonesing for it, so I was pretty happy to watch it these past 2 nights.
Yeah.
So, we've seen everybody except for the Crew play as we record on Thursday afternoon. The Crew will play tonight. Obviously, it's always about, can an MLS side do it? Can they get to the final? Can they win the final? Again, we haven't seen the Crew play, but of the teams we have seen, do you feel like one of those teams actually has what it takes?
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia are a good team. Columbus have proven themselves to be a very good team. Outside of Portland in the MLS's back tournament last year, they were the best team there. And it's not that surprising that they ended up winning the title, at the end of the season, given that they were able to maintain that form for a good chunk of it. So, I think they have a good shot, but I don't watch enough Mexican soccer or Central American soccer to have a good bearing on it. But if I'm going off of history, probably not. And I'd love for the Crew or literally any MLS team at this point to be the team that cracks it. But, someone's going to have to prove it. And we've gotten awfully close in the last few years.
Yeah.
But
knock on the door.
I mean, it's as loudly as you can, too. And, Toronto were minutes away from winning it not long ago. So it's a difficult competition. I'm glad that MLS teams are taking it a bit more seriously now. Obviously this season complicates things with the later start, and I think we've seen some sluggish performances a bit as a result of that. But hey, it's live soccer, and the domestic season is here.
Take it. Get that yellow. Get that phantom penalty for a handball when the ball hit the guy square in the face. Let's get it. Let's get it going. I want it.
That's right.
Anything else? Anything else domestic?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, teams are signing players, dropping kits left and right. The NWSL had some really good debuts for kits, as well as brand new.
Their league starts tonight, I think, right? Tonight or tomorrow?
Yeah. We got to see the new Racing Louisville kits, which are just chef kiss delicious. They're priced outrageously, but they're really good looking.
Blue City's always done that.
Yeah, they really have.
I remember early days of USL, looking at their jerseys, and that was when most lower league sides were not asking more than $60 for a kit, and some of them were at 30 or 40, and they were still asking 90 right out the gate. Yeah,
they were. I think it was $90 that they were asking for out of the gate.
Yeah.
And so they've got a bit of a habit of that, but good looking kits nonetheless. Sky Blue FC rebranded to the New York, New Jersey Gotham FC.
Yeah, we're not suing them. Don't worry.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah. But all that said, great branding from them. Their new kits look slick too. So big news on the NWSL front. That's exciting to see them come into the season with a bit of hype, right? It's really good to see big sponsors that are signing on, better TV coverage that's going to be around this season. It's going to be a good year, I think, for women's soccer in the U.S.
I'm excited. Looking forward to it. Winners and wankers?
Winners and wankers. Who is your wanker this week?
My wanker, and we talked about it, or we alluded to it at the top of the show, so I wonder if it's also yours. CBS going 100% behind the paywall for this round of the Champions League.
I've done this one so many times now that I felt like I had to do a new wanker.
Every week it happens, I get more mad. Like
I know.
It has not died down. It's a renewed sense of anger every single time.
I think it's frustrating because we don't know if it's always going to be that way, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. There's not a transparency where like going into a round or going into the week, like there's even a clear understanding of like, okay, these matches are going to be here, these matches are going to be here.
Mm-mm.
We don't.
And it's that inconsistency that means I can't decide like, okay, I can sever my cable bill because I don't need cable anymore. Like the Premier League, like some weekends everything's behind Peacock, and the next weekend like half the games or most of the games are on Live View TV. Like it's just a very discombobulated system that we have now, and it's just extra frustrating that Paramount's getting in on the action.
Yeah, and I think that is the frustrating thing because we're not at a point where everything is its own entity and that's what you do. Like we're still at a point where most people, and especially if you want to watch consistently soccer, you are going 2 paywalls deep, right? You're having some sort of cable access, be it actual like traditional Spectrum cable or Charter or Comcast, and then or like a YouTube TV. And then you're going beyond that and getting the ESPN Plus, the Paramount Plus, the Peacock. It's like you're putting stuff behind the paywall that we're already showing we're paying for, right?
Right.
Like what am I paying? Like there already was a paywall. It's called that.
Yeah, I know. And I already paid into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extra frustrating, and I'm growing tired of it, and I want us to either like shit or get off the pot. Like, can we go with cord cutting or can we not go with cord cutting? Like, if you're going to put all the games behind services, then I can make my decisions about what that's going to look like. But until then, I have to do both. And that is what makes me more mad than anything else.
Yeah, no, it's just frustrating. I did check. While I couldn't find any information about the semifinal matchups, I did find confirmation that the Champions League final will actually air on the CBS network, the network, not CBS Sports Network, but on CBS proper. Get your bunny ears on the top of your TV, get it out, and so you can, tune into your local CBS affiliate. I think May 29th or whatever.
Yeah,
but it'll actually be on the network.
Yeah, and that's kind of normal. And you would expect that they would want to do that with a game that's literally it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just a different Super Bowl that people aren't as used to here. But there's got to be an enormous market for that. And why wouldn't you be also putting semifinals on your main network when you have a property that's that big? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all.
There's precedent for the leagues not being okay with some of this. I mean, I don't know if you saw, like, the Premier League has basically kind of said that they were blindsided by the fact that NBC is shutting down their network at the end of the year and going Peacock only.
Yep.
And so this summer, or possibly even sooner than that, is going to be negotiations for the new contract that'll start after next season. And if you're going into it and the current rights holders, they just pissed off the league.
Yeah.
So if I'm betting, I don't think I'm putting my money behind NBC retaining it at this point.
It seems really likely that they won't, and that the industry experts kind of think that that's leaning that direction anyway. They feel like they overpaid for that property. I mean, the speculation now is that a streaming service, maybe an Amazon or ESPN Plus, will pony up the dough to do that, and that's fine. I'm pulling for ESPN Plus or an existing service that I already have because I don't want to add another streaming service to my package. Like, I've got too many already, and I don't want to have a fifth streaming service just to watch my team. Like that's just it's too much.
Yeah, but I do worry. I get the ESPN Plus to be very convenient, and especially if their prices stay around the same, like it's still such a great value. I still think that the Premier League is helped by the fact that they are on regular cable regularly.
Yes.
And have been for well over a decade now.
Well, and that's why.
And if they go to ESPN, it's either going to be it's probably going to be a situation where they're basically only on ESPN Plus, because you think during the college football and basketball season, which takes up pretty much the entirety of the Premier League season, ESPN has so many rights to all these conferences. They're not going to be able to air anything outside of like the 7:30 kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, it does restrict them, and the Premier League chunks a lot of those marquee matches in that 12:30.
Yeah.
Sometimes even 3 o'clock time frames.
And it would be impossible for ESPN to air those games during the fall.
Yeah.
Every single channel they own is airing a live college football game at that time.
Now we'd get tons of them in the spring.
Sure. And we'd get loaded down.
Yeah. So we'll have.
I think it's going to be an Amazon, or I think the only other one that makes sense that actually has like the room to do it, although they did such a terrible job with the Champions League, would be like the Turner family of networks. They have the space. They're not airing college football. They're not airing college basketball. They got the space.
Space is cool.
They did a terrible job.
Their track record with the sport is not good. Definitely wanker territory there for sure.
Your wanker?
My wanker, I'm going with Romanian referee Octavian Sovre for chasing Erling Haaland down the tunnel after his match against Barcelona this week to get the player's autograph, which I know we've talked about this on the show more than a few times. If you work in sports, especially around professional sports, people working at the games are literally forced to sign like waivers that say you won't do those types of things.
If you have a credential, your credential generally, in any American sport I've ever worked, literally says in giant letters, no autographs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very clear directive.
It's like the number one rule.
I mean, literally, I don't think there's a more clear rule in journalism. I am going to out you again, not that we haven't done this a million times before. You've totally broken that rule before.
Sort of. So it wasn't an autograph.
Yeah.
But I did get a photo with Oscar. At that point in time, in that evening of coverage, I had pretty much just thrown in the towel on respecting the hatchet job media relations that was being run at that event. So it was actually kind of like my middle finger to just the poor organization that was just running things there.
Yeah, but this wasn't a preseason game at Lucas Oil Stadium. This was a Champions League knockout round match, and it's a giant no-no. Now, as it turns out, Sovre was actually getting his red and yellow cards. He was the linesman in the match. He was getting them autographed, not for himself or to sell, but actually to help raise money for a charity that he runs back in Romania for autism, which is very noble and kind of like makes you go, fine. But here's the deal. You're a Champions League referee. You've got a network that can connect through to those things, right? Like
for charity, most athletes, even the most vain, pretentious ones, will still kind of like bend the knee to charity.
Yeah, exactly. So while his intentions may have been noble, it's a really bad look, and he has gotten pandered left and right for it, and one would suspect he'll finally find himself a while before he's reffing Champions League matches again.
A quick aside to the Oscar story. He was actually the man of the match that night. Like we did, because the media all voted on it. And then they had to announce to us in the press box that while he had received the most votes, because Guinness was the sponsor and he was 20 at the time, they're going to have to give it to Victor Moses. There
you go. Way to go, Victor.
You did it, guy.
He was pretty pleased, I'm sure. What about your winner this week?
My winner, and you kind of we hit on it a little bit, but Nike crushing it with the NWSL kits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, across the board, there is some fantastic kits going on. There is a lot of people are talking about the contrasting situations that we have with the NWSL and MLS.
Mm-hmm.
MLS's kits, well, I think are actually really good this year. Traditionally, have been panned for being too template driven, too basic, not creative. We're like Nike is just running wild with these NWSL jerseys this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just NWSL. They're literally doing it everywhere right
Yeah,
now. And they said this is a big initiative for them going
right.
into the season. Like everyone was going to have the chance to do something unique for them, which is a really cool program to offer all the teams and so desired in this state where everyone lives in those template lands. And it's not just Major League Soccer, although they're probably the most guilty party. You see this across all the major properties that Adidas has. They're all very much similar outside of a few ones that they kind of run different paths with. Juventus kind of being that main outlier for their half of things. But yeah, I mean they've really done it up, and I think they've knocked it out of the park for the women's ones, which is just again a great sign for the sport that they're getting the respect and the design power from Nike that you would hope. And having previously worked with Nike on designs, they do kind of give you the reins a little bit, and it's a fun process to be involved with. And it's really cool to see them do that, especially in a week where they're just getting roasted for their political involvement in things. So a good contrast for a company that maybe needs a little bit of positive press at the moment.
Your winner?
My winner, I'm going. This is going to seem a little weird, but I'm going actually with Weston McKennie's neighbor, who actually called the police on
Ratted him out.
Yeah, he ratted him out for hosting a party. He and a few, I think Pablo Dybala and a few other Juventus players were given 1-game suspensions for the club for hosting parties that are literally illegal to have right now in Italy. They have not loosened their lockdown restrictions near as much as other places in Europe. Understandably so, given how poorly the beginning of the pandemic went for them. And his neighbor called him in and says, look, I have nothing against Weston McKennie. He seems like a good professional. He stays home or he goes to train. He goes, I support Juve. That's why I'm sorry. But maybe they should attend fewer parties and focus more on the pitch, which is like a 100% accurate thing, but also like good on a fan for ratting out his own team for like not doing the healthy, smart thing that really needs to be happening right now.
Well, because
like,
you know what? That fan probably would like to go to a game sometime soon.
Right? Like he's tired of paying for season tickets he can't use. So there's my winner this week. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Those who listened into the full 100-minute extravaganza last week will certainly take joy in knowing this one will top out under 50 minutes.
Yay!
Hooray. As always, if you want to get involved, please reach out. Jeremy's at Jeremy Lance on Twitter. I'm at Wrong Side of Pond. Until next week, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.